Hello and welcome back to the Moving Up podcast. My name is Adam and I'm delighted to share another interview in this bonus episode. This time it's with Luke Angus. He's a Scottish filmmaker who wrote, directed and animated Solstice, which is one of the BAFTA nominated short films this year. It follows a lonely Inuit who must endure the endless summer daylight to be reunited with his lost love, and it is a truly heartwarming piece of work. I urge you to check it out. You can watch it for free on the BAFTA YouTube channel. For now though, here's my chat with Luke Angus. Hi Luke, good morning, how are you doing?
Good morning, doing well. Adam, how are you?
Amazing. Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me some of your time. I watched the short last night and it was brilliant, so I can't wait to talk about it. So, love the wood in the background, by the way.
It's my constant inspiration. He watches over my shoulder everything I'm doing, making sure it's good enough.
That might be a good question to start off with then. Like, what films, when you were growing up, what really inspired you to get into animation?
Yeah, I mean, Toy Story is the one. I mean, it's the thing you don't really know at the time. You're just absorbing all this content and these movies, you're watching them, and only in sort of hindsight you look back and think, which ones do I feel like have shaped what I make, and Toy Story's been with me from the start, definitely. And I think once I really settled into a career to what I wanted to do, Pixar short films in general were so clearly what I am kind of emulating in my own way, with the sort of emotion and this tone of them and the no dialogue. Yeah, and the sort of often high concept, which I think Pixar shorts always had a sort of high radical concept that was often a metaphor for something. But yeah, you don't realize it until you start making stuff, and then you just make what you think is good and what's inspiring you. And then you sort of, yeah, look back on that and be like, oh, this is quite like the Pixar shorts. I used to love them. And then, oh, I must have been influenced by them. So I would say that the Pixar early, like 4 or 5 films, I mean, everything since then, but those early days and then, yeah, their short films were all masterpieces.
Lovely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Some of the best films ever, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, give me a quick overview of where did the idea for Solstice come from? It's quite a unique location to set a short film in, I think, and the character designs are so charming and so unique. So where did you pluck it from?
I'm going to continue my theme of sort of not knowing their inspirations, and they're just like, you know, emergent properties of your childhood experiences. And I think what must have happened. I mean, I grew up in the west coast of Scotland, where we have like stunning night sky, proper night sky without the sort of light pollution you get in cities. So you see the sort of Milky Way, and you see and just grew up. I used to go out with my dad with a telescope and look at very like cliche, let's go look at the stars with your dad and all that, and telescope in the garden, and did that, and like would see the ring around Saturn in the telescope, or we'd point out different like that, look at Andromeda, and so I always had this connection to sort of night sky and the stars, and I always remember in the winter, um, specifically if I was younger, I would come home from school in Scotland, it would get dark at like 4. It gets dark at like 4 in the winter. So when I would get home from school, I could go out and see the stars basically like that before I went to bed as a child. But in the summer, I wouldn't. It doesn't get dark until 11 p.m. So I just might not see that. I just go to bed and would never get to see the sort of deep night sky. So I remember this connection between like the winter being like when I get to see all the stars and this amazing like pointing out all the different constellations and features in the sky. So that must have been playing a part in this, and then just having a love, I think love for I mean these themes that keep coming up in my films about like isolation and loneliness and loss, and part of that is just the how relatable that can be, as like we all sort of put our own story into those themes. With I have my experience with my own, like maybe I would say more than a lot of people, with like some loss I've dealt with in my life and things I've had to deal with, and so these are in my mind when I'm making films. I'm trying to pour into something that I can connect with, and I think others will connect with, but I'm not being so specific as to tell my exact story with my grief. It's just that it's about yeah, the loss of someone or grief. And anyway, so just merging all these things together and they sort of like you put this in and you what comes out is Solstice. It's like marrying these ideas of like waiting for the winter to return and that being your sort of companionship and your company and your and then setting it in the Arctic Circle as like this perfect, setting for there's months that go by without the sun rising and there's months that go by in the summer without the sun setting. And that's just such immediately that's an exciting place to set a story for like in a kids animated film to be like, wow, what an interesting like constraint on a world to be like half your year is in darkness. I mean, in the real world, it's not exactly half a year and half a year, but like for the purpose of the story, it's very like, on the 6th month mark, the sun sets and the stars all come out, and that's really nice and charming. But yeah, that just felt like a really fun constraint to have on a story. And yeah, and then I mean the final piece in this was that I just had a very clear for however this happened, I had this idea of an ending of it being, spoiler alert, poking holes in the wall of an igloo and letting the light come in through these holes and it almost looking like the night sky. And that to me, I was like, that is such a brilliant. I don't know what this story is, but that is that ending. I had that early on, and I wrote backwards from that moment. I just said, that's a good ending. How do I get there? And then I wrote, yeah, continue to develop the rest of the world around it.
That's a really interesting approach. I think it works wonderfully, and I really liked the, as you say, you basically mirror the image of the night sky and then the effect in the igloo afterwards. And
Mhm.
I really like the way that the second character is sort of like dancing through the stars. What they're kind of not
Yeah,
quite there, but you can see like the
yeah,
face is well defined, and then just the outline, and it's a beautiful like shimmering effect. You mentioned, well, first of all, you did this entirely on your own, right? You animated this, scripted it
yeah,
all on your own. How long did
yeah.
that
I
take?
know. I've been saying 4 years just because I think when I look at my first sketches or ideas I wrote down, I mean, I've had the idea for, I think, over like 10, 15 years in a notepad somewhere. And that idea being poking holes in an igloo could look like the night sky. And igloos are in a place of the world where they don't have the night sky. So I was like, okay, perfect. Write that down. So I wrote that down 15 years ago. I don't know how long, but a long time ago. So then production started, I think maybe 4 years. But I always caveat that by saying I have a full-time, I'm an animator at studio, or like I'm a freelance animator now, but like um I work full time basically. So this is just in mornings and evenings and weekends. And so it's hard to say yes, 4 years, but not like a full-time dedicated 4 years. I don't know why I always want to make that caveat just in case people think it's like overwhelming that you have to spend 4 years. I don't think so. I think you can if you could do it in if you'd full time on it, it'd maybe be about a year and a half, maybe something like that. But then a lot of things happen in giving it more time. You just have a lot more time to think on it. And when you're not working on it for maybe a month or two at a time, things come up in life. I found that often they're the times when I can kind of get step back for a while, and then when I come back to it, I can see it with fresh eyes and reassess what's not working. And the story specifically, the story took so many different shapes and like paths to get where it was. And I think that's also worth noting that like um you don't always get there, you never get there first time. You'll always think you've got something great and then you step away from it for a while and come back to it and you're like, oh, you know what, that actually doesn't quite work, or this isn't maybe giving the wrong message or something like that. So yeah, I think there's benefit in sort of taking your time and don't and just sit on it for years and just be thinking on it a lot, and then sometimes the best ideas take a while. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very good point. Having worked on it for so long and sort of in your spare time, I guess it must have felt like a bit of an escape maybe from the more like set in stone things that you have to do. So
Yeah.
are there any things in here like maybe small details that perhaps the average viewer might have missed or maybe might not appreciate, but what specifically are you quite proud of in here
I love that
that you'd
question.
like to
I
share
do
now?
have lots of little things that you put in it. I mean, the thing about animation is like nothing is for free. So everything on screen was put there by me, or you don't just
Mm.
turn up. There's not like a busy set that you just there's loads of stuff and clutter in the background. Like it's all placed by the nature of the medium. Yeah, there's lots of little things that I can hone in on. There's a moment I've not even no one's mentioned this and I've not mentioned it, but there's a nice little thing I added called. Do you know what the green flash is in a sunset?
I don't know if I do. No, go on.
There's just like a natural phenomenon called the green flash, which is when you have a sun setting over a flat I think it has to be specifically over whether it's over water or it's over just if you have a completely flat like plane, like off in a horizon of an ocean. You get this phenomenon called the green flash. It happens really rarely where just before the sun sets, there's this moment where the light turns green and then so the light of the sun turns like it's like a fraction of a second. Anyway, there's a green flash and there's a close up of the sun setting in the film, and I thought I'm gonna add a green flash. I don't know, that was a fun little detail added. Yeah, and then I mean, there's so many little things that you add in. Um, I mean, there's on the stuff that's very intentional for the viewer to see. That like the first shot of the film is sort of the light cracking through the igloo and waking him up in the first place, which is the sort of the eventual solution to his problem at the end is this thing that happens again at the end. But I like this idea of sort of starting the film with almost like a spoiler for the ending, but it's when you watch it again, you're like, oh, that's how he gets out of his problem. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of any other little details that are worth mentioning, but I think I'll stick with those two for now, and if any other come up, I'll mention.
It's probably nowhere near as specific, but I really like the calendar, like the way that they move the fish hook along on the
Mhm.
on the pins and the bolts, and
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was really cute. And is that something that are you aware? Like, is that a way that they actually keep time, or is
No,
that?
no, it's not. It's not. It was purely his world and his need to track specifically because I mean tracking time is you know a very Western thing to have it
Mm.
as precise as we are. You're gonna be late for work. You're gonna be to the minute and all this like that's a very Western culture. So it's not it was the story device to make sure the viewer so that there's a very difficult thing that I had to tackle, which was I needed to show a lot of time passing in his world, specifically in the montage where he's alone through the summer. I had to show that there are a lot of time was passing. But the maybe the first thing you might think of as a filmmaker to try and tell that is to show like a day-night cycle, to be like day, night, and then like lots of day. I mean, in a sort of very cliche way, but that's a way you could do it. Because otherwise it starts to look like he's having one really long day and he's waiting for nighttime of a typical day. And it did look like that. Before I had things like the calendar with the hook moving along, very clearly showing a day each time he moves it, or I have the wood stock pile diminishing because you'd think you're not going to go through much wood in a day, so I'm thinking that must be a longer time. Um, yeah, and then so I have all these little techniques throughout to try and show this is not one really long day. This is a season. He's alone through the summer, the entire summer, because it's not something we intuitively all can connect to this idea that the sun doesn't set. So anyway, we're so in tune with sun setting, and then that's a day, and that's when the day is over. So yeah, the calendar was I had lots of different techniques. There's sundial, so things like sundials, and like there was the solution he has at the end, poking holes in the igloo. I had a solution like that where I had a board inside his igloo, and when the light came through every day, the light would like move along the board slightly because but it wasn't clear visually or as clear visually as this like hook on a calendar method I had. And I liked that it was almost something that he needed, and so he had this little makeshift thing that he had, which he throws away at the end. He doesn't need it. So yeah, but it was primarily just a story device to be as clear as possible without any dialogue, to be as clear as possible. It's like what was happening. There's a day passing. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, great solution. Oh yeah. So one bit I really love this, the fur on the coats, and I watched a behind the scenes video that you put together and you said that this was your first time using Houdini. I mean, to A, be doing a project on your own, and B, to use a completely new software,
Yeah.
is that something you enjoyed? Was it daunting? Or like each time you pick up a new project, do you sort of want to learn something from it? Because that's very Pixar shorts, that's exactly
Yeah, I
what,
know. It's like why they made their shorts.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's funny. It's a good I hadn't really considered the fact that like the Pixar short comparison in that regard. But yeah, I mean that is a huge driver for me of my films is to sort of learn something new or to try and push something further or like in a sort of risk-free environment because when I'm working for clients or doing work for on a big budget project for like a big IP or something, you don't always have this flexibility to just or like the time or the the risk of trying something brand new you've never done before and you need it to work because it needs to be in by next week. But on my own stuff, it's like my playground where I can just like for free. I can just give it a go. And so the fur, I knew that the fur would be such an important like aspect of this character. And I was stubborn for a long time not using Houdini. I think the whole time I knew Houdini is obviously the best way to do this, but I just was very intimidated by the software and it's just known as it's a completely different pipeline, a completely different like way of operating than the other traditional 3D packages. So I tried a lot of other things first and nothing was giving me the look I wanted. And then luckily I have a lot of friends in the industry and a lot of them are very good at Houdini, so I could get on a few calls with them and get the basics. And once you get past the basics and the sort of fundamentals of how this operates and how it works, it's not too crazy. You can start to get the logic of it. And then before I knew it, I was in there and I was really enjoying it. And it was the flexibility as like an artist, purely just as an artist, the flexibility you have now, the control that you have. It's like every other software, I felt like I would just get what I get, and then I'm like, all right, I guess I'll do. I don't really have the controls to like shape this how I want it. But Houdini is this incredibly powerful software that just allows so much freedom and control where I'm like, and I felt that's good because it's like it's yeah, it's like a simulation and it's like a physics based system, but at the same time I'm like the master. I am telling it when it's more rigid in certain areas of it, how windy it is and certain aspects of the fur being affected by the wind more than others, or trying to keep the face clear was a big problem because the wind it would like blow the wind and it would blow in his face and you couldn't see his face, and obviously that's such a key feature of um not only his character but as a storytelling device. Again, it's like this little emotive face, you don't want it to be covered. But yeah, so Houdini just offered all of this, and so it was just a case of just sort of biting the bullet and going for it, and I'm so happy I did.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, it paid off for sure. And is there anything that, well, I don't know if you can say yet, but what's your next project? Like, what do you think you'd like to try next? What sort of
Yeah.
techniques do you want to explore?
My next project's called Redivider, and it's a sci-fi short that is probably, I think I've almost finished, I have finished the previs and I'm now working through animation, but knowing my process, things can still change and I can still add things to it. I might still have ideas. I'm like, oh, I need to add that, and then I add things. But right now it's about six minutes, which is nice, a bit shorter than Solstice, a lot shorter than Solstice. But what I'm trying in this one is a more realistic character. So the human in the character in the world is a bit more realistic, not these sort of charming cartoony um characters, but something a bit more realistic in that the expressions therefore need like full face animation and like you don't really get away with the sort of cartoony look. They'll look strange. So I'm doing a lot of like face tracking, like with cameras on my face to film my performance and translate it over. And it's just in general going to be a lot more realistic looking. I'm always hesitant to use the term photoreal because it won't be photoreal, but it'll be more realistic and more like gritty and darker, not sadder, but just like a darker tone, sort of like a Love, Death and Robots type, like lighting and mood. Um, so yeah, less if you call this for kids, less for kids, but not like there's anything graphic or gory, but just like this, yeah, tonally you wouldn't immediately think, oh, set my kids down and watch this. Yeah, so that's where I'm going next. Just again, it's just a case for me to explore that. I've not my last few films, most all my films have been very like had this light sort of levity in the character design, and this I'm coming away from that and being like, no, let's try a realistic human, which requires realistic like body mechanics. So like mocap instead of keyframe animation and face animation. Yeah, so it's good fun. I'm enjoying it. Just this totally different pipeline, but yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And just as a final thing, I mean, BAFTA nominated. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Was that
Crazy.
ever something that was on your mind? Like, oh, this could get me a nomination here, or is it just something that's totally come out
No,
of
if
the
you
blue?
could see how this film started, I had just finished making a one called Alienated, which is what I made before this, and I was quite not burnt out, but I was like it's quite an exhausting process. So at the end of it, you're like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that again for a while because it's like Alienated was also several years, and then especially in the last like few months, you do this kind of hard push to get it done. And you're just like this relief, the brain space I get from like my, it's like finally it's on the screen and it's locked and I'm done. I can just get out of my head and it's quite a relief to finally have this like mental space back. But then that starts to feel quite like "Ugh, I need to fill it with something again." So I was just like, I didn't really know what film was next, and I looked at my notes of all these ideas. I saw the Solstice note. I thought that's a nice little. Before I even made the story like fleshed out. God, I just went on my computer and started like mocking together a little silly character. I just mindlessly doing some stuff like that as I sort of think about the story. To think that that led to getting nominated for a BAFTA, it was like that's what's really surreal about it. It's just me in my house on my own, just messing about with some model thing and then not really know what I had. I just didn't know ever I didn't ever know I was making like this film, like to be where I am now. And I think if you do set out to do that, it's kind of it would be naive. It would be like arrogant or something. I don't know what the word is, but it would be foolish to just be like, I'm going to make a film that's going to get nominated for BAFTA. It's like there's so much out of your control. You just do, and I also think I'd be in my head about it if I was trying to make some sort of like BAFTA focused film, like that you're thinking about the people who are judging, but like you just have to just make what you think is good, and that's all I've ever done. And this one seems to be connecting in a sort of deeper level, and it seems to be, I mean, the reception it's getting is like I've not had before. So yeah, it's been absolutely crazy. And to see all the films that I've been admired all year at the festivals and stuff, and somehow I'm here as the final three now. Like I don't fully understand it, to be honest. But yeah, something's working, so appreciate BAFTA for getting me here.
Yeah, well, as I say, huge congratulations and best of luck. It's at the end of this month, isn't it?
I
I've
know I've got
been,
to plan a trip to London. I mean, it's also last minute. You get the nomination, then it's like, okay, in 3 weeks you're going to that. And I'm
yeah,
like, okay, I need
yeah,
to
yeah.
get all my stuff together, and yeah.
I'll for sure be keeping an eye out for this category. Fingers crossed for
Mhm.
you. And yeah, in the meantime, just enjoy it. And thanks for putting so much effort into
Yeah.
this beautiful little film.
Oh, thanks so much and thanks for having me on this podcast. It was great to chat, and thanks for all your questions.
A huge thank you to Luke for giving up some of his time to speak to me about his short film Solstice. I still find it incredible that one person can create such an intricate piece of art and all the while working on other projects for other clients. So impressive. After recording, Luke and I had a good laugh about the BAFTA process, how he could stand out amongst the crowd with a neon kilt. Who knows? Maybe he'll take my advice. He was a brilliant speaker, and despite the interview being scheduled very early in the morning, his passion for the filmmaking process was so clear. If you'd like to be interviewed about your upcoming film or TV work, please do reach out. You can send us an email via hello@movieonup.com or follow us on Instagram and TikTok. The handles for both those platforms are @MovieOnUp. We'd love to hear all your reviews, news, predictions, and suggestions. Drop a follow wherever you're listening to this, comment, and leave us a rating. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back very soon for another edition of Moving Up. Episode 100, here we come!